as I said earlier and as I said before, plenty of times that, like, at this point the entire world is paying for this war. And some of you people here back home are, I'm not sure, but some of you guys here back home are so unpatriotic. You guys are saying, oh yeah, he should put boots on the ground, and but you're cheering for body bags to come back home and stuff like that. Guys, listen, this is so messed up, because, like, I think that the military is neutral in this process. It's neutral in this entire process, and plenty of you guys on the left are cheering for that, and cheering for for boots to be on the ground and then bodies to come back in bags and stuff like that. But it's beyond that. The military is very neutral in this process and in this war, and men and women in uniform are just following orders. And I don't want to see my countrymen go out there and get killed and coming back, dying and coming back, just for this expression. I rather cheer and root for my countrymen to be victorious if they ever go into Iran and try to, like, if the orders were ever sent down for them to go in and put boots on the ground. I'd rather see my countrymen being victorious. I don't want to see my countrymen coming back in body bags. I want to see them be victorious. This is the United States. This is where I live. This is where my family live. This is my country. I don't want to see my countrymen come. But some of you people out there on the left and some of you people out there just are completely lunatics, man. Regardless if you guys, like, hate the president or not, like, this is not it's not the president being out there, on the ground and fighting or whatever it is. This is men and women in uniform who signed up to serve, and they're gonna follow orders regardless if you all think the orders are correct or not or whatever. They're following orders. So I'm gonna be rooting for my countrymen to be victorious, and be triumphant over, in their missions or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like, come on, guys. Y'all can't be that cruel and bitter against the president to the point where you're rooting for a country that really hates us for years and years. And they told us to our face, both Democratic and Republican president, that, listen, this is, we're sending death to your country. They hate us. For what reason? I don't know for what reason they hate us. Yes, you might say this war is unjust, or you might say this war, is whatever it is, whatever you want to call it. But I'll never root for my countrymen to go out and die just to prove a point. Just to prove a point. Y'all gonna be rooting for your countrymen to die just to prove a point. This doesn't make any sense to me, and this is completely lunacy. Honestly, this is completely lunacy. I couldn't hate a president that much for me to be rooting for the troops to die if he ever sent them in battles. And at the end of the day, regardless of what you want to say, if the troops ever set foot in Iran, this is for the greater good of America. This is for the greater good of wars are ugly. This is for the greater good of the United States, and this is for the greater good of securing the country, and securing a threat that, not even securing a threat, like getting rid of a threat, eliminating a threat that is saying death to America for decades. So, like, you guys should really take a look in the mirror and fix yourself on that one, because there's no way you could hate your president that much for you to rooting for the troops to die just to prove a point that he was wrong about this whole military operations, this whole thing. But as I think as time goes by, as I said before earlier, a few days ago on my previous live stream, that gas prices are just going to continue to climb higher and higher and higher. We might see, if this persists, if this war persists, we might see $5 a gallon gas by end of spring, early summer. We might see $5 a gallon gas, because based on what the Iranians are doing, they're just blowing up any and everything they can blow up. They attacking their neighbors. They're attacking everyone else. They're trying to destabilize the world, and the only way they can destabilize the world is through energy, because energy is the lifeline of the world. Energy is the blood of the world, because everything operates in energy. Without energy, there's no commerce. Without energy, there's no financing. Without energy, there's no movements of goods and services. Energy really controls everything, and this really tells us what's going on. This really shows us that listen, man, energy is everything. This really shows us the lifeline of the economy. This really tells us everything we need to know. So that's what the Iranians are doing. That's the only card they can play at the moment, because according to our military, most of their defense systems are down, and most of their navy is completely obliterated, and so that's the only thing they can do really right now to really get one up on us, is destroy energy infrastructure and attack their neighbors, for their neighbors to be mad at us, and to pressure us to really stop. So I am completely neutral in this situation. There's a bunch of ways to look at it, and two things can be true at the same time. It can be true that, listen, man, the Iranians were really after us and wanted to really dish harm to us, and to us meaning America, and the president went in just to really stop that and change the regime and trying to change everything, because they're the biggest state sponsored terrorists. They're the biggest sponsor of state of terrorism. So they sponsor a lot of terrorist attack that happened in America here and all over the world. And the president was sick and tired of that. And on first administration that they were doing this, not only under Trump but under Biden himself, under Obama, so on and so forth, and nothing was done to really correct this issue. So that's one way you could look at it. You could look at another way, is that the United States really followed Israel into this, and so there's plenty of ways you could look at this situation. There's plenty of ways you could look at this situation, but the bottom line is who's correct and what is correct. And the bottom line is you gotta be a patriot, man. This is your country, and this is where you live at. I don't want to see my president fail. I don't want to see my country fail, because if my country fail, I am failing. If my president fail, I am failing. Because everything trickles down when you look at it. You understand? So even though you might be against something and you couldn't speak up in time to stop it, or whatever you said couldn't really stop the ongoing operation, you don't want to, you can't stop it now. Everything is already everything is already passed through. You can't stop what's going on now. All you got to do is pray and hope that we become victorious out of this situation. There's no boots on the ground, and there's a, you know we could resolve this situation. But don't be praying for, you know boots to go on the ground and hundreds of body bags come back. Don't be praying for that just to prove a silly point, man. Like, who does that? Who does that? Who does that? That doesn't make any sense at all. You have to. And honestly, I'm gonna say something which might get under a lot of people's skin, but you Americans who are born in this country, and you Americans who are from this country, and maybe 2 or 3 generations from this country, you are the most unpatriotic people I've come across. Some of you, not all of you. Some of you, not all of you, just some of you. You're the most unpatriotic, selfish people I've come across, and you all want to see your country fail because you might hate the president, either Republican or Democrat. But most of us who migrated here, most of us who come here legally and have a stay and eventually become naturalized, we understand what it means to be patriotic. We understand what it means to be like for your country, and go down with your country, whatever